This week on Right Now, investigative journalist Ben Swann talks to us from America about censorship and Ukraine. Consultant surgeon Dr. Mohammad Adil tells us about his suspension from the NHS. Joy Warren gives us an update on the UK fluoride-free campaign. Canadian filmmaker, journalist and activist Josh Sigurdson is in the Right Now studio giving us his analysis of the last 2 years. And we'll be telling you how you could be getting up close and personal with my dad David as part of his 70th birthday celebrations. Friday, 7 p.m. UK, Ickonic.com.
I've seen it coming for a long time. I went after Stephen Harper before Justin Trudeau, but Justin Trudeau, everyone knew for years before Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister that he would be Canada's Obama, that he would be this establishment figure that would pretend to be anti-establishment and would get in and push the New World Order agenda, the technocracy agenda, the transhumanist agenda, which he didn't waste a single day doing. The second he was in office, he ran as fast as he could to try and push forward crazy new policies. I should point out, kind of like Joe Biden in the US, there's no way he's writing his own policies. I doubt the guy can even tie a shoe. But with that said, he was the perfect face for the establishment because for years, even rather intelligent people would say, yeah, well, I just like him. He seems like a nice guy. He's the kind of guy I want to get a beer with. Look at his haircut, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. He was a perfect person to put in that place. Now, very few people like him. When I confronted him in 2017, and I famously called him a scumbag, mostly because he winked and smirked at me after I asked him a very serious question. And at that time, the government had come up to me and told me what questions to ask him, which I wasn't in favor of. I like to sleep at night. At that time, when I confronted him, everyone loved him so much that I couldn't walk down the street. People threw sandwiches out windows at me. A guy punched me. People were spitting on my shoes when I'd walk down the street. I couldn't go anywhere. One of the main reasons I ended up leaving Canada was that and exposing a child trafficking ring back in 2017, 2018. And at that point, it was too dangerous for me to go anywhere. He got a restraining order against me, and I had to hightail it out of Canada. So I left early on. I'm happy I did. It was one of the best things I ever did was getting out of Canada. Great Canadians out there, but that country needs to fall. It cannot be saved. And it's absolutely pathetic what's come of it. It is basically much like Australia and New Zealand. It has fallen into the hands of the globalists to such a degree that 90% of people will beg and protest for their own enslavement.
So I think there was something very clever that was done here, and that is there's a, Dr. Robert Malone got in trouble recently for referring to mass formation psychosis, right? Which I think is exactly what we've watched in different forms throughout COVID, and then again right here through this situation in Ukraine. It is very interesting that people who think they are awake, right, will suddenly stand up and say, well, I recognize that we're being lied to and I'm being forcibly injected. I'm being told that I'll lose my job if I don't get a vaccine. Suddenly they seem to be waking up, and then you push a new narrative. But it's not actually a new narrative. It's an old narrative that plays on kind of the psychosis and the psychology of the public, because it pushes buttons that are already familiar to them. Concepts like Russia bad, war bad. The whole story surrounding Zelensky is so strange. If you really look at what's happening there, I mean, this is a guy he's an actor. He plays the part of a guy who stumbles into the presidency in Ukraine the same year he actually becomes president in Ukraine. And so most Americans, quite candidly, and probably it's true of people in the UK, couldn't have found Ukraine on a map 2 weeks before this happened, right? They couldn't actually tell you where it was. They know absolutely nothing about Ukraine. But the media is very good at something, and that is painting a narrative in very simple terms. You've got to have a hero and a villain, right? It can't just be Russia versus Ukraine. And that's not the way the story is being told. It's Putin versus Zelensky. Zelensky is this noble leader. And I will say this, for Zelensky and his handlers, they've done a very good job of faking a lot of his image. So all of a sudden you see Zelensky walking around holding a cell phone, recording himself, doing selfie videos, talking about resisting, Putin and the Russians as war is on its way. He only wears now these green military T-shirts and fatigues, the bottom up. And so he has this look, half shaven, and he's not really shaven. He's scruffy, and he comes off as if he's in the front lines himself, right? At war himself, even though he's not involved in the war. I mean, other than maybe the planning part of it, but it doesn't require him to be dressed this way, right?
Why did you go to social media? Did you try and speak with colleagues?
I did spoke to my colleagues. Most of them were frightened, and they just looked after their jobs, unfortunately, and their families, and they saw everything is what is happening is not right, and the hospital were lying empty. At least 80 to 85% beds were empty, including the intensive care units, where we used to have a lot of patients there after operation, and a serious patient with the respiratory problem, with the cardiac problem. They were ventilated. But the number reduced because the entry of the patients into the hospital decreased significantly.
And people died at home, didn't they? Because they
People
weren't going into hospital.
were so scared and they were so fearful to come to the hospital, and they died at home. They died in nursing home due to dehydration, due to isolation, due to poor medical facilities, because none of the health professional was ready to go into the nursing home because of the fear of having the coronavirus and dying.
Right.
This was sort of a fear which was created, which was not, I couldn't swallow that. I saw this is not right. We have taken the oath as a doctor, a Hippocratic oath, which means do no harm. But if I keep quiet, I thought that it means I'm not justifying my job.
Of course.
And I am saving my job because I need to work, but that I couldn't swallow.
Just give our viewers a snapshot of what exactly fluoride is for a start, because I don't think most people realise what it is. It's just something that comes in toothpaste, doesn't it? People don't necessarily realise exactly what it is.
Yes, the stuff in toothpaste is the manufactured standardized fluoride, sodium monofluorophosphate. But what they put in the drinking water is 6 times strong as far as fluoride is concerned. It's hexafluorosilicic acid, is a hazardous industrial waste, which comes from the fertilizer manufacturing. Superphosphate is made from rock ore, and when they crush it down, they use sulfuric acid to make it to actually extract the phosphoric acid. The waste left over is fluoride and lots of heavy metals, which hangs around, as it were, and if it wasn't sold, it would have to be neutralized and buried, as it were. At the moment, they are selling it, the manufacturers are selling it to people who want to use it for water fluoridation. And those are people in America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and a little bit of UK, and most of Ireland. It's a really bad thing because it's corrosive. You wouldn't want to drink it neat, obviously, because it is really bad. It's a 20% solution of fluoride in water. It's been put in our drinking water instead of being neutralized and buried, basically, because it's a good way of getting rid of it in our water pipes.